right, let's go ahead and get started. If anyone else joins in, we'll catch them right back up. Thank you for joining in this afternoon. Welcome to our webinar on some of our more advanced features, a little bit of oversight. This is all about leveraging data analytics and the global cost forecast. Two features that I'm actually quite excited about. I use a good bit, and they have a lot of very powerful and very unique ways of looking at project aggregated data. My name is Alec Dorsling. I've been here at Northspire now for 2 years. Before that, I was in the construction and development industry in the Central Florida area for about 7 years. So love what I do here, love what we do here at Northspire, and all of you guys for being Northspire users, stuff that I wish that I had in my time, but I'm excited to work with people that get to use it there as we get going. Before we start, I do want to point out a couple pieces of resources that you have available to you. First off, you all should be familiar with your individual real estate transformation consultant. I am a real estate transformation consultant, but everyone should have their own individual real estate transformation consultant that they interact with. You'll hear us call them RETCs. That's the most direct and consultative nature that you have available to you. We also have our concierge help desk, both email and chat. It's the same team members that we use if we run into any help. So if you start utilizing the data analytics and you get stuck somewhere, feel free to reach out to either the RETC or the concierge. But we also have our knowledge base. It's down at the bottom of Northspire. So right next to where the chat window would be if you're at the bottom of any of the pages on Northspire. I'm actually going to point out specifically some of the portfolio analytics knowledge base articles. If I go to the knowledge base, it's down here at the very bottom. And I actually pull up and I search Portfolio Analytics Plus. Some of the items we're going to walk through today are right here. I see a lot of different articles that are going to have graphs, so a couple of videos, how to utilize those features the same way that we're going to walk through today. I would strongly encourage you guys to check those out and any of the other knowledge base articles that we have available in that area. As we go forward, today, like I said, we're looking at leveraging data analytics and the global cost forecast. A couple more upcoming trainings that we have, building an advanced draw tree can also be one of those advanced features a little bit. More basic trainings as well. If you've got any users or team members on your team that have not been to a basic training webinar before, they're great. Going into August as well, a couple more basic trainings, Northspire 101s, document management, report builder. Report builder is the output function that we have on Northspire, very similar to how the overview of what we're looking at today is overview across the whole portfolio. So a lot of great training sessions. I would love to encourage you guys to check those out as you get started. What we're going through today, though, kind of today's agenda, I want to do an overview of what data analytics even is. What are the pages? Where do we find those? What information is going to be brought up? Second, how do I leverage the global cost forecast? What does it do? How do I actually see into my portfolio structure and things that I have there? And then three, how do we enable data analytics? How do we manage the actual budget line types and some of those portfolio groupings that we have? When do I use Portfolio Analytics Suite? One, if I want to have a broader scope and a bigger understanding of either a particular cost category or a specific vendor and how that applies to all my projects, not just one. We have overview and the ACR in a single project, but analytics allows us to see both those categories and vendors across the full project, or the full portfolio. Second, to compare how projects are doing, not just against themselves, but also a different project that may be very similar in structure, or a benchmark across my entire portfolio, or a subsection of projects. Like how is it comparing to its brethren? And third, just to understand where your organization stands as a whole across all the projects that you have. How does data analytics actually drive the success of a team? Well, one, it cuts down on a lot of time that it takes to actually compile these views and compile these features. It gives you accurate and automatic baselines across your entire portfolio just by managing the projects with the Northspire system that you already know. Two, it gives you powerful insight into current project status compared to where everything is, something I just mentioned a second ago, but you can always see any individual project there as part of our new Portfolio Analytics Plus suite. And three, it just gives you a high-level overview of patterns that are developing across your organization. You notice that a certain cost category is always a little bit overrun, but you can't necessarily put your finger on why. We can highlight pretty quickly exactly what that reason is. We go. At the end of the day, what I really hope that you guys are able to do is just walk away knowing, A, what data analytics even are, how to manage them, how to navigate that suite. Two, understand what you're actually seeing on the page. But then third, and most importantly a little bit as we enable these features, as we walk through them, is how to actually set them up and have your portfolio groupings and project budget line types available so that it enables the analytics suite to give you very powerful and accurate info. As we go forward, feel free to log in, open up Northspire on a side screen, pull up some of your own projects there, and follow along with me. User reps are generally the best way to learn. I'm going to go ahead and pull up Northspire myself. But we're going to start from our portfolio manager page. This is a page that everyone should be familiar with just by logging into Northspire previously. This is where I can see each one of my projects. So currently I'm paired to 4 projects here on my screen. I can see the dashboard view, the card view, the list view. And typically most people are going to click into one of the projects. I'm logging into Northspire. I need to be managing something on my actual project. So I can click directly into the project. Something you may not notice every now and again next to incoming approvals or vendor directory is actually our analytics suite. We're going to take a look at 3 specific ones today. We're going to look at the cost analytics, the vendor analytics, and then also the global cost forecast. One thing I do want to point out is that most of the things we're looking at today are available to you guys as users if you have one active Pro license. There are a couple things that are a part of our new add-on for Portfolio Analytics Plus. If you don't know what our Portfolio Analytics Plus is, or if you're interested in having that add-on as part of your package, I'd encourage you to reach out to your RETC. We have a couple interesting things that I'm going to mention at the end of the call today as well. If you're watching this live in July of 2024, you're seeing it in the future. Portfolio Analytics Plus is probably already ripping and roaring for your organization, and this is a training video for you, and we're glad that you're here as well. So, wanted to point a couple of those things out. But the analytics suite is right here on the portfolio manager page. One other place that you can, I'm going to open this up very quickly and then we'll pop right back over. I'm actually inside of a project. Under Power Tools, I can also get to my cost analytics and my vendor analytics from the portfolio analytics folder inside of Power Tools. So I just want to point that out. But from a portfolio overview sense, the analytics suite's got to be in the top ribbon when you're on the portfolio management. Let's start with cost analytics. What cost analytics allows me to do is actually just see deeper insight into a specific cost category across all of my projects or even a subgrouping of projects. So for instance, let's imagine a scenario where an executive asks for a status report on where we are for project architect costs across all of our projects. What that would normally look like for me is I'm going to spend hours and hours getting all of the latest information, making sure everything is accurate and up to date, compiling my own filters of, okay, I just need not the whole, architecture and engineering, but like the people that are listed as the project architect, the main architect on the project. I need to pull all those in. I need to, collate the information, filter it out, gather it all together. It's going to take me a long time to do that. And in the interim, my regular job isn't getting done. With cost analytics, what it looks like is just by managing the project through Northspire, it allows me to have that entire status before that executive even gets back to his desk. He can ask me for that, say, hey, I need this at the end of the week. Here it is. It's right there. No extra work was needed. All the information is already accurate. It's already filtered by what I need. You can even give it to them, for every single project across the whole organization, if it's not just a subset. So the way we do that is by getting to cost analytics, and we can either look at a portfolio grouping or all projects across my portfolio. Budget line types are really how we do this. So every budget line on a project is assigned a budget line type under the budget categorizations page. So each project that's listed down below, very similar to the ACR, I can see the project lines, the project line items by getting a drop down. So architect of record on 125 Madison was assigned the budget line type of project architect. On 150 Park, I've got the cost code associated with it. 3110 architecture, but still associated with the project architect. This frees me up from having to name everything exactly the same, but I can still see the powerful outputs of cost analytics right there at the same time. As I mentioned, it's going to give me an aggregated total anticipated cost across each one of these projects. So for the 4 that I'm paired to, each one of them has a total revised budget, total commitments, and then it adds up to that total anticipated cost you're familiar with on the ACR. Overall, across my organization, however, I can see, okay, my revised budget for project architects across each project was $2 million. My aggregated total anticipated cost, however, is 3.19, or basically $3.2 million. I got a variance of close to $1.2 million across each individual project combined for my portfolio of $1.2 million. That's a bit of an issue, right? However, I can still see into exactly which one is the problem. My total anticipated cost on Madison is much higher. My variance is much higher on Madison than it is for 150 Park. On 150 Park, I'm pretty good. On Office Tower for 125 Madison, I've got a bit of an issue. What commitments, what exposures are actually logged here that's going into my total anticipated cost? Similar to the ACR, I can click directly into any of these blue numbers and see the numbers that data up. If I click total commitments, I can see all of the architectural services contracts that have been assigned. If I click directly into that title and into that contract, it will actually take me to the project page itself. Same with exposures, right? If I look at an exposure, why do we have so many exposures on 125 Madison? I can look at that directly. I don't have any PCOs on 200 East Highlands. I don't have any PCOs on 150 Park, but I can dig deeper into why my project architect costs are projected to be very high across my portfolio, right? I have a lot of PCOs for Woods But Go on 125 Madison. I can see each one of them here. If I click my overtime change order for 250, I can see who loaded that in, takes me directly to that project. Gives me that oversight of each project that I have. One of the things that I do want to point out, however, I've mentioned at the beginning, most of the things that we see here on a lot of these features are going to be available if you have one active pro license. One item that isn't for pro licenses, but it is available on Portfolio Analytics Plus, is going to be our budget overrun. This is going to take an aggregated total of the variance projected and divide that by your total revised budget in aggregate. So right now we're projected across the portfolio to overrun our project architect by 60%. Another item that's available on Portfolio Analytics Plus is my percent of total development costs. So if I take the budget lines for every project across my portfolio, I can see the costs assigned to project architect for all of my projects is 2.1% of all the development costs that I have. The other item that is Portfolio Analytics Plus specific is going to be my table options. In table options, very similar to the ACR, you've got a couple of other things you can do. You can add in cents, you can highlight values, you can include pending transactions, but you can also add and remove columns. So by default, I have total revised budget, total commitments, and exposures. But I can add in original budget if I want. I can add in the percent of total development costs for my portfolio. And I can look at that by project as well. For the project, I'm sorry, not portfolio costs. This is going to be the percent of total development costs for the individual project. I want to make sure that I'm clear on which ones are portfolio level and which ones are project level. That is available with Portfolio Analytics Plus as well. So the table options, the budget overrun, percent of total development costs are all available with Portfolio Analytics Plus. The project cost breakdown and the change overview are available for everyone there. I'll let this load for a second, but you can see the difference by project, broken down by project for my original budget value, what my current revised budget is, and my total anticipated cost. So for instance, we've talked about 150 Park Phase 1. We're pretty even there. Everything's looking pretty good. My budget hasn't changed much on base building construction, but I do have a pretty high total anticipated cost. And Office Tower has escalated pretty consistently. What those changes are related to, every change is going to have a reason associated with it. I can see that most of these changes are actually due to errors and omissions, right? That might be a problem. If I had change orders that were from owner changes or my client changes, I can tolerate that. But most of these are currently due to errors and omissions. If I want to look at what errors and omissions there are specifically, or let's say that we've looked at this and now I've been handed it to the executive. We say, okay, these are the 4 projects with project architect, but a particular vendor is the architect on certain ones of those. I now need a report on those cost overruns with that specific vendor. What that looks like originally is a whole lot of forensics. I got to dig deep into that. I've got to go find where do these numbers come from? Who's the problem child? Once I've identified that, I need to go find all the pieces of information. I need to go pull all the contracts, pull the change orders, the invoices. Where have we gone wrong with that vendor? Then looking at that vendor, I have to look at which project was it. I got to go compare the project totals themselves. With our analytics suite, we don't have to do that anymore. Now, every transaction from each vendor is already filtered and logged across any set of projects or the portfolio at large. So let's say that we've got, 4 projects here. I've set up a portfolio grouping, which we've now, we will look at in a second. But we want to look at the actual project architect for all of my JV partner projects. And I know that that's Woods Bago because I just looked at some of the invoices and exposures. Got invoices. These are all from Woods Bago. I know that that is going to be the actual problem child. What I have the ability to do is go from cost analytics, which is looking at a specific cost category, and go to vendor analytics. With vendor analytics, I'm looking at, instead of a cost category by project, I'm now looking at a specific vendor by project. I can filter this just for the JV partner projects. You'll see that Woods Bago is only on the JV partner projects. For instance, in an example, let's say that I also have a subset of projects that are just my East Coast projects. Woods Bago is only on one of the East Coast projects, but the report I've been asked for is actually the JV. Very similar information on the ACR that you're used to, that you know and love, but now with vendor overview styled information. I've got contract totals broken down by projects, change orders, total commitments, exposures, each by individual project, but also aggregated across the entire portfolio grouping. Remember, I did select just the ones that are with a specific JV partner. You can also look at the total invoiced here. The project cost breakdown is going to show me which projects have large amounts of change orders or exposures without having to go dig into each and every one of these. So for instance, you can see here with core and shell renovation, I do have a large amount of change orders. I had a base contract of $385,000, but I've got change orders for $500,000. I had a base contract of $385,000, but I've got change orders for $500,000. That's over the amount of base contracts I even started with for that project. That's going to be an issue here. I need to dig into that. I can click very quickly into my change orders list and go see all of the change orders added for Woods Bago across 100 West Highlands. Garage ad service and this particular CO seem like they're pretty high. If I need to look into those even deeper, I can go to my project vendor overview and see each one of those, or I can click directly onto the link for the actual change order. I'll load that here. I can go find the change order. I can see when it was accepted, who approved that, any approvals that it went through. I can always dig through those. If I notice that Woods Bago on my vendor analytics, as well as my cost analytics, had a very high kind of rate of variance there. Another thing I can see is exposures, right? On base contracts, I'm looking pretty even across the board. Change orders were high on core and shell, but right now for Office Tower, it looks like I've got a decent amount of exposures from Woods Bago on that particular project. I'm not sure at first what that is, but I can click directly into it and see each one of these here. For instance, the lobby redesign looks like it's the biggest piece of this. Inside my organization, I know we've talked about redesigning the lobby for 125 Madison, but right now it looks like that's actually going to be a pretty large piece of that for Woods Bago. If I've got exposures that are adding to my total anticipated cost, that lobby redesign looks like it's looking at. But aggregated across my entire portfolio, if I have Woods Bago on 6 projects, or if I'm just looking at a particular portfolio grouping, I can still see my percent complete across all of them, my total projected contracts, cost per square foot. Vendor overrun is again going to be one of the things that's reserved for our Portfolio Analytics Plus suite. It's an add-on that you can add to your subscription package. Again, we encourage you to reach out to your RETC and we can take a look at that. Or also down below in the chat, in the questions box, just go ahead and say that you would like to add that, and we'll follow up with you as well. So that's a quick breakdown of our cost analytics and our vendor analytics. Cost analytics, vendor analytics, going to look at one specific thing. We've looked at a specific cost category, specific vendor, but what if we had a place where we could look at everything for all categories across all projects in one location? That is actually going to be our global cost forecast. Before I get to global cost forecast, this is one of the items that is part of our Portfolio Analytics Plus suite. It will not be showing up if you only have a pro license, similar to how cost analytics and vendor analytics will show up. But if you choose to add this on, I want to walk through what you have. Global cost forecast is essentially your ACR for your entire portfolio. Doesn't matter what the names of the budget lines are, doesn't matter what projects they're a part of. You can always look at where you stand for your entire organization, all of your development in one place with global cost forecast. The way we do that is by budget line types. So remember earlier when I said each budget line and budget categorization is assigned a budget line type? On the global cost forecast, we're actually going to see directly what those budget line types are. A good example for this would be, let's say that leadership is looking to see a breakdown of where the whole organization stands as they're strategizing for next moves. You spend a bunch of weeks compiling everything into a single report, try to consolidate line names, cost codes, statuses, latest information. And then right before you actually turn that over, as you're getting those numbers crunched, there's a last minute request to say, not all of them. Let's actually look at a specific grouping of those as well. Now, all the work that you just went through goes out the window a little bit. You're still not getting your actual job done, your actual work that you need to be getting done, but now you got to try to revert all that for a single meeting. Global cost forecast answers that by saying, here's everything in the whole portfolio, or here's everything in a subset, or here's all the budget lines that we have for a certain budget line type, but we want to look at where do we stand with all of our permits and fees? Where do we stand with all of our financing costs across the whole portfolio or subset? That's what global forecast does. Like I said, it's really the ACR for the whole portfolio. Down below, you're going to see each budget category and how they relate to the whole portfolio. For instance, if I look at JV partner, first, I'm going to see that my total development costs down here, total revised budget is somewhere around 124, not offset. Grand total of 129 if it is offset. As I update for JV partner projects, that 124 and 129 will go down as one of the projects was removed. You see I'm looking at 3 projects here. 69 million and 74 million. We were looking at the project architect earlier. That's going to be underneath soft costs. Inside of architecture, engineering, and design, I'm going to go look for project architect. Here was the total revised budget that I had, $1,700,000. I've bought out $2 million worth of contracts. I've invoiced $979,000. I've got a variance of that 1.2 that we looked at earlier. I can look at each individual line item, each individual line type in the same way that I was looking at a single one in cost analytics. If I want to see deeper into that line type, the drop down, rather than seeing budget lines similar to subcategories, is going to show me the actual project costs. So these are the projects that have a line type that is listed as the project architect on the project. For East Highland, it's listed as Architectural and Construction Council. I also have an architect of record line item on East Highland. On 125 Madison, I have architect-record. And on Core and Shell, I have architect of record. Each one of those line items was, budget categories was listed as that budget line type. And now I can see aggregated data across the entire portfolio. Same thing with cost analytics and vendor analytics. If I'm looking at a specific contract or commitment, I can click in here. I can see the slide out. I can always track everything that I have, each component of that contract. If I want to go look deeper into it, it will take me directly to that project page. If I want to look at specific invoices, I can see all the invoices across my whole organization by clicking into specific projects from one sheet without having to flip back and forth. It's a really clean way to see all of everything across projects. One other thing that you do have with the global cost forecast, however, is comparing projects either to one another or to a benchmark. Up here on the top right, I'm going to click compare. I'm actually going to remove this portfolio grouping first. I'm going to click compare. And first I'm going to compare just projects. Let's say that I want to compare the core and shell and the base building project because they're very similar projects, but I want to see exactly where they stand. How are we tracking along with each other? The 2 projects I'll select, base building and core and shell. And then I need to select the metrics that I'm comparing. Let's say, for instance, I want to see where our revised budget is for both, but I also want to see where our total anticipated cost is tracking for both. So I'll go ahead and select total revised budget. as well as total anticipated cost. What this gives me is a breakdown of all my budget line types of those two projects. I can see how close we are together. For instance, base building construction and core and shell. Underneath my total revised budget, I have a much higher budget for civil engineer on core and shell than I do for base building construction. However, my total anticipated cost for those, base building construction and core and shell, are very similar, right? I can see the delta between those two. And what this tells me is I don't think I had enough budget inside of base building construction. They're very similar projects. I had enough budget there when I was estimating the project for myself on core and shell, but it looks like we messed something up with base building construction. Similarly, I can look at interior designer. We have the exact same number because they're very similar projects on our total revised budget. We haven't made any changes anywhere. We have no delta between the two. But on my total anticipated cost, it's $2,000 higher on base building construction than core and shell. It's a very quick and easy way to see very similar projects if we're on track or if something is off on a certain category between two projects. Outside of comparing them just to similar projects, however, you can also compare it to a benchmark. What we mean by benchmark is saying, okay, we have a grouping of projects. Let's compare one of those to the specific benchmark. So if I'm looking at all of my JV partner projects, and one of those JV partner projects is the office tower project, typically I expect to see $1.90 per square foot from my JV partner projects. But on my civil engineering costs on office tower, it's much lower. Either we have not started and I've got way too low of a budget, or we're saving a lot of money on office tower here. JV partner projects typically are much higher, but office tower is doing something right on civil engineering. I can dig deeper into it. I can see across the entire board for soft costs, I've got average cost of $206 per square foot for soft costs. On office tower, I have a cost per square foot of $26. That tells me that most likely something is wrong with that one. If I'm looking and analyzing office tower against other projects that are similar to it, global cost forecast allows me to compare that to the benchmark, which is our portfolio grouping right there, and enables you to do that. Like I mentioned, global cost forecast is part of our Portfolio Analytics Plus add-on. You may have seen a pop-up when you logged into Northspire recently that we're offering currently a 45-day free trial of this add-on if it begins anytime between now and the end of July. Again, I do want to encourage you to take some time out of this month and see if that's something that you'd be interested in. And feel free to reach out to the RATC that is on your account if you want to get started. As I mentioned before as well, if you want to do that, go ahead and put a little blurb in the questions down at the bottom. We'll be sure to follow up with you there. The last thing I want to get to is how we enable all these analytics. I've mentioned before that both cost analytics, vendor analytics, and global cost forecast all operate with budget line types as well as portfolio groupings. Where we set those up is going to be portfolio groupings in the portfolio manager, and then budget line types in the individual projects' budget categorizations. I'm going to start with portfolio groupings. If I come back to my portfolio manager, I have the ability to make a new portfolio group up here at the top. I currently have East Coast projects, that's my 150 Park and 125 Madison. I also have JV partner projects, 100 West Highlands, 200 East Highlands, and 125 Madison. It may be that I just reset my internet here a second ago, but you should have the ability to add or edit portfolio groupings directly from this page here. However, that's where you manage those portfolio groupings. Where the budget line types happen, you might have seen this as you log into a specific project. On my ACR, every now and again, you'll see at the very top, I think I do have one that will show this, of budget line types that need review. I know the name of the budget lines and budget categories are here, but on the actual budget categorizations page, if I click into, let's say, civil engineer, and I notice that my budget line type is incorrect, I can update that right here, and I can see exactly where I'm going. Now, my civil engineering line on my core and shell is going to correlate to my civil engineering budget line type on both cost analytics and the global cost forecast. Let me go to another portfolio group here. I know that I have one that has some review needed. Here we go. Base building construction. When you have this notification at the top of your project, what Northspire is actually flagging for you is there's 12 budget lines that look like they may be better suited in a different budget line type. So for instance, one that happens a good bit is general contractor or GMP or contractor as a line item. It sometimes get assigned to contractor fee rather than contractor costs. The budget line type for contractor fee is just their profit margin with your hard costs, right? If we have the budget line type assigned right there of contractor fee, you may be missing out on a number of your costs that are actually belonging to your contractor hard costs. So when you flag and review inside of budget categorizations, it'll actually pull it up for you. It'll flag it in red, lot one hard costs, lot one soft costs, but each of the other line items look like they're pretty good. You can also update those at any time, but by turning those on, that's what's going to enable your cost analytics, vendor analytics, and then your global cost forecast as well. The last thing I do want to point out is underneath the portfolio analytics tab is going to be what's called portfolio budget categorizations. This is one location that you can see each budget line and each budget line type across all the projects, and then what budget lines on that project are inside of that budget line type. A lot of words that I just said there. What it means though is if I have the budget line type of acquisition fees miscellaneous, on Office Tower, I have two budget categories that are assigned to that budget line type. Same with base building construction. Both acquisition fee and finder's fee are assigned to the acquisition fees miscellaneous budget line type. On phase one, my closing costs are assigned to acquisition fees miscellaneous. So it allows me to see each project that I have, all the budget line types, and then if I need to add any, let's say that on phase one, I know that I have a design architect separate from my project architect. I have architecture underneath project architect, but I also have a design architect. If I need to add a budget line, I can do that right here. I can see, okay, what is that budget line name? What am I naming the budget line? What's the subcategory that I'm adding that budget line to? And then I get a full list of that project and all the budget line types that are there. We have gone through a lot in a short amount of time, but hopefully you feel pretty enabled to actually turn on budget line types, turn on portfolio grouping, and then see the impact that makes inside of cost analytics and vendor analytics. A couple things I want to challenge you with. Once you're feeling good using those, go ahead and try creating a portfolio grouping. It can be a subset of your projects that has to do with the team member. It can be geographical location. It can be asset class. It can be any mixture of those. A project can belong to multiple portfolio groupings at one time. But go ahead and try to create one. The second step is go ahead and verify those budget line types. If you've got any that are flagged on the ACR for a project, go ahead and review those, and it will enable being able to use cost analytics and vendor analytics that we just went through today. Third step after that is just go to those pages. Visit the cost analytics, visit the data analytics and the analytics suite. See what information is there. If something jumps out at you, that's the whole point of the analytics suite. You can export, you can report on a lot of those. You can turn those into a couple different reports. But also talk to your RETC about Portfolio Analytics Plus. So you can get access to the global cost forecast. You can get access to some of those vendor overruns or cost overruns, percentage of total development costs. Pick and choose what columns you want and turn those into reports that are really useful for you and your team. A little bit of homework there. Feel free to follow up with me or your RETC once you've done those. We'd love to help out. Thank you guys for taking the time with this afternoon. Thank you for joining in and looking at a couple of the data analytics that we have. Hopefully it's a very powerful tool for you guys moving forward. Really appreciate the time.